The following class, titled Soul 2, was given by Father Paul of the Holy Order of Mans on June 17, 1969. This class can also be heard on tape number 603B.
I said that I was going to continue tonight on the lessons of the soul. I've collected together quite a composite view of various different writers on this subject, so if you see or hear anything that's slightly has a slightly different air to it, why remember, this is material that we're talking about, so as to get a composite picture of various views in history of what has been accepted, so that we can be prepared to understand more about what, when we start to read other religions, what their concept of soul is, if they have one. And this is one of the important things we have to know, because at the base and foundation of all religious beliefs and philosophies is the soul and its eternal path. And without it, of course, there is no particular reason for having a philosophy. And there's no particular reason for us being here. Because without this, without some reason for it, why, there'd be very little reason for us going through this work and this endeavor to do anything at all. We could just go out and get ours, and that'd be it. Well, isn't this so? So we'll start in with this, and I will read several writings on these, and so to give you an idea. The important matter to be considered here is what constitutes the personality of man. It is the personality of man, or the soul personality, as we call it, which is most concerned in all earthly existence through the reincarnation of man's soul, reincarnation of the soul, as we shall understand it, is for the purpose of evolving the soul or being, its personality, that it may attain a certain goal. But the lessons learned by the soul personality in its process of evolution are of use to man only through the personality he expresses in each incarnation. In a few words, personality may be said to be the mind of the soul, that which is hitched upon it, just as the individuality may be said to be the brain of the material body. In using the word mind, in this case, a distinction is made between the mind and the brain, which distinction is or should be familiar with all students of man. And we, especially in the Holy Order of Mans, make this distinction, because this is our link with God. The personality has as its principal elements of the soul's storehouse of memory. If we assume or firmly believe that it is a single incarnation, the lessons learned today are able to serve us tomorrow, or a year or 10 years hence. We must admit that the memory has its vault, its storehouse of facts and experience, pictures and impressions. The materialist will claim that memory and its possible storehouse are faculties and functions of the brain, a physical thing associated with a subtle mind, or an unknown soul. We will point to the fact, the indisputable fact, that a blow upon the head or a clot of blood upon the brain will prevent the brain from remembering a past impression. The fact is that the injury to the brain will affect recollection and conscious memory. It is a fact also that a blow upon the head or an injury to the brain may remove or affect the desire to eat or to drink, but not even the materialist would claim that this proves that the injury to the brain removed or destroyed the existence of hunger or the existence of thirst in the body. The brain is an organism of the body through which all the emotions and desires are consciously realized and find their power to function or manifest outwardly. To injure the functioning of the brain is to affect the conscious, objective realization of facts or impressions. And it is all in the material manifestation. We may close or obstruct the threshold which leads from the inner subjective to the outer objective chamber, but such shutting off of the free passage of thought does not destroy the thought, and most certainly the blockade does not prove the non-existence of the chamber beyond. That is the memory vault. The memory is stifled and made non-manifestable by an injury to the brain. Does not prove that the memory resides in a material outer chamber of the human body. Paralysis may make mute and inactive every physical faculty and muscle of the human body to the extent there are no signs or signals of intelligence that may be expressed, but the mind will continue to find and have within its chamber many thoughts unable to manifest in the subjective. This is a combination, you see, of the outer and the inner, one leading to the other. In the Orphic religions, religious cults of the 6th century BC, the soul was considered a divine element evolving through earthly experience. We read in the tenets of this school, the soul is a part of the divine or universal soul, for which the body of man is limited, and the mortal condition is not a fit organ, but a tomb or prison the body consists of and is likened to. The continued existence of the soul in the body is a punishment for the sins in a previous condition. The Orphic school principles and rites tend to establish a belief in a homogenetic state of all living things, in the doctrine of the original sin and the transgressions of the soul. John Milton Wade, in his English manuscripts on the secret laws of the Orphic rites, say, it was taught that the soul was entombed in the animal and early earthly body for that length of time which would permit it to gradually attain perfection during its contact with the material earthly conditions, tests, and trials. When the soul has attained the perfected degree, it is freed from the circle of generation and no longer requires contact with these conditions. Tests and trials through repeated imprisonment in human bodies, at the conclusion of this circle, it again becomes a pure and evolved soul and returns to the divine source as before it was first imprisoned. Of course, here's what our statement is: after a person has the door of realization open, they can climb to the place and gain evolution and consciousness so that they leave the wheel of karma behind. This is what they're talking about. And of course, they went after this from an entirely different standpoint of view, but still very close when one considers that this is back in the early days, long before the Master Jesus was here. We find such thoughts in the writings of Clintothus, and the Stoic philosophers, born at the Essos in Tauros about 301 BC, he held that the sun was the abode of God, and from the sun radiated the divine essence, the soul of God. This soul pervaded all space and inseparable segments, entered the human body born on the earth. The soul, or sun god, essence, was the vivifying fire of ether of this universe, emanating the intelligence of the provident God. Plinth advanced and added an original idea that the degree of vitality of the soul after so-called death depended on the degree and vitality in its life in the body. Arguments in favor of the belief that the soul is the divine element or entity having its origin in God resided temporarily in the early earthly body, and being freed as the dissolution of the body to return to the original source. This is like the returning to the mind of God and many other things that has been mentioned in other philosophies. We study many other philosophies based upon a thorough examination of man's mental and spiritual existence that associated with the soul and mind, and the mind is an attribute of the soul. The brain is not logically a part of the body of man unless he admitted that the mind is an attribute of the soul. This distinction between the brain and the mind is apparent as we study the mental activity and possibilities of man. With Spinoza and a host of other deep, careful, and unbiased scientists, we agree that the human mind cannot be absolutely destroyed with the body. This is because we have the ingrained wisdom of the experience of the past life in this form. The only thing that we have to be careful of in these sort of readings and lessons is that we don't form definite opinions from them, but use them as information and to gain our own state of consciousness and the realization that the soul is definitely the storehouse and vault of knowledge of our past lives. And we want to remember this all through the lessons on this subject, because there is much written on it in the old mystic schools. Aristotle says each man is a substance like any other only because he is a separate individual. Like any natural substance, he is composed of matter and an immaterial essence. But the natural substances are organic and inorganic, and man is an organic substance composed of an organic substance as matter and a soul as essence, which is the primary actuality of an organic body capable of life. Still, man is not the only organism, and every organism has a soul. What differentiates man from the natural and organic substance and approximates him to the supernatural substance, God, is reason or intellect. And although intellect is only one of the powers of the soul, intellect is the only one of the powers of man that has no bodily organ and is immortal and is alone divine. With the existence of the soul within man admitted as being related to intelligence, consciousness, and the vital life force, we have reason to believe that the soul is a divine essence. Its source is God, and its existence continues after its transition from the body. If these principles are statements in regard to man's soul, are accepted as being reasonable, logical, and probable, the further argument in the succeeding lessons will prove to reason out and to give one an understanding of the various doctrines of the earth and their aforegoing conclusions. You see, it is important for us to understand man's concept soul, because then we can understand his reasoning and his state of consciousness, because his philosophy and his life must be based on the vital question of whether he believes in a soul or whether he doesn't, whether he believes in the immortality of the body or he doesn't. Can you hear me back there?
Yes.
All right. If I'm talking too loud, well, just let me know, because I want them to hear in the back row. They need it so bad back there. If the purpose of the soul within the human body were merely to give that body a divine element, so that man would be so much a part of the divinity that he would be like God in his thinking and doing, then the purpose of the soul was not fulfilled in its mission and has failed. It was also said that there must be another or more practical purpose for the soul, and the one which was successfully fulfilled in its mission, because we cannot conceive of God's plan in this regard continuing to fail. So our study of the real purpose of the soul in man, as well as the real purpose for the existence of the soul at all, leads us to the discovery that the laws and the principles of reincarnation and the evolution of the attributes of the soul are the prime movers of life. Also, let me point out that the soul, personality, and character are ever in the making. In this fact, in this process, we find the true purpose and existence of the soul. If the soul, as a divine attribute, entered each newborn body fresh from the realm of God, unexperienced in the earth things, unacquainted with the problems of material existence, and then ceased its existence at a time of transition and passed into the higher realm and remained there indefinitely, then the soul and its existence, or its purpose, would be a very complex problem, and one which might never be solved, as already pointed out by many other great philosophers. From a purely materialistic or chemical point of view, the soul is not necessary. In a newborn child to maintain life, it must have some other function. And what purpose, aside from the vitalizing of the body, could the soul have if it, like the body, is occupied with a new entity, a separate and newly created thing from each incarnation? Well, of course, this is partly true in the fact that we pick out the body we want to inhabit in the first place before we come in, and therefore we know what our potential reactions are in life in a general way before we enter into this life stream. That is why we pick out our mothers and fathers, whether we like it or not. We must come to that conclusion, because otherwise it would be purely chance and purely domination and not free choice. The soul in each body in every incarnation is a separate entity, a new pupil in that body, placed there to experience the tests and the trials of life for the first time. And if after passing through one of the incarnations of experience, test, and lesson learned, the soul then passes off into a place off into a place or condition of indefinite suspension to await a judgment day, then the possible evolution of the attributes of each soul would begin at its birth into a body and end for all time at its transition from the one body. Can you imagine that such a short period of evolution or development of the soul personality for billions of individual souls, all awaiting the final judgment, would serve any practical purpose to man or God? Such a scheme would be inconsistent with God's nature and constructive program as we observe it anywhere and everywhere. It would mean that the process of evolution as we observe them is in the material world, exists only in the material world and not in the life hereafter at all until another body had been regained. If the soul attributes of the spiritual consciousness, did you get that? Do you understand what we just said? In other words, this is a replica of the teaching of the average Christian church. You live today, you're gone tomorrow, and that's the end of you. Until you get on the other side, and then you hope you've done enough today that it'll take you through tomorrow. And that's the end of the story. You have no more grace, so why grace in the first place? It don't make sense, does it? That's what we're talking about. This is a repetition of how the soul would be constituted if there was no such thing as reincarnation at all. Any questions? Yep, back there, Johnny.
What relation does the blood have with experience as compared to those of the soul?
All right, we'll get to that, John. Be patient for a minute. May I put it that way? Not cutting you off at all. Any other question? Yeah, somebody else stuck our mitt up here.
You mentioned immortal bodies. Is that are you talking about physical bodies always being in existence?
No, the soul and the self.
Oh.
It's the soul body. Mm-hmm.
Could you say some more about the distinction between mind and brain? Just exactly what the distinction is?
You'll get some more of it. I'm going to have to clean this out and put it together because it's worthwhile. It gives you the comparative pictures put there of all the various philosophies and religions on this matter, which are fairly informative. Gives you a good argument, too. If we grant that the soul comes into the newborn body fresh from the spiritual realm without any previous experience on earth and passes through just one experience here in one incarnation and then returns to the spiritual realm to remain forever and ever, then may we ask what benefit is derived by the soul's experience here on earth. If each soul has but on an average of 80 years of suffering here in the physical body, then remains indefinitely in the spiritual realm without another incarnation, what good or usefulness can the experience of the 80 earthly years be to the soul? How could it be of any correction? In other words, you suffer for no reason at all. And this guy over here is suffering from going to sleep. You better go to bed. Huh? No, I don't mean you. I mean our friend here. He's so sound asleep, he's just fighting for it. Go on, take a night's sleep. And go to bed and get some rest. Huh? Well, I know, but I don't want you to put you through any misery doing that. Maybe if you turn that out, you'll be all right. He's probably sitting right in the flexion of that heat. I think I'd go to sleep, too. Can the knowledge that the soul gains through its earthly experience be of any value on the earth plane? There is a big question. That question is answered. Can the attributes of the soul, such as the personality, evolve sufficiently in one earthly existence to make the suffering in the test worthwhile? The answer is, it is of no avail. If up to that age we were learning the great lesson through test and trial, could the soul personality round out its evolution and attain any degree of perfection in a few remaining years in the body? If from the cradle to 40 or 45, which is the year of maturity, of course, the perfection. 42 to 45. 6 times 7, perfectly easy. The cradle at 45 or so. It is learning and storing up its lessons and experience can be utilized. It can utilize these lessons and perfect its development at 75 or 80 of age. Even if you grant that the soul might be able to do so around and round out some of this development of its personality by the time life here closes. What purpose would be served if perfection and development of the soul personality is attained only with the close of life? Such development is ended without use hereafter, and then is the process of human evolution. Evolution worthwhile, and does it serve any purpose in the universal scheme of things and the planets and places in which we live? There is one answer that suggests itself immediately to us. It is this: the experience of the soul personality is tests and trials during one earth life experience, and so short a span as 70 or 80 years must be for the purpose of preparing us for an experience in another incarnation. The soul that leaves the body at transition and passes into the cosmic carries with it, in its consciousness and in its personality and character, the lessons learned through what we have often called bitter experience. No matter how many schools of philosophy it may have passed through in one incarnation here, no matter how well educated in the school of study and intellectual development, no matter how skilled in the arts and sciences, no matter how complete the universal department of the soul may have been made here on earth through study, observation, religion, altruistic work, careful application, and so forth, not one single experience of the soul was learned. Not one single test or trial it may have had is of any value to the soul in the cosmic world. Each experience the soul has had on earth plane makes it that much more fit and prepared through the incarnated soul personality to meet the obstacles and conditions on the earth plane, but not on the cosmic plane. Now this is why we are so fussy about concentration, meditation, and all these other things, is so that when you do get ready to move out of the body, then you'll have something to work with, because your mind is your motivation on that plane of things. It might be argued by some that the soul on the cosmic plane can use its earthly experience to help those here on earth, which it may contact through cosmic conditions. But while such a statement contains a truth, it does not completely answer the question, as you will see from the experiments and the realization of our experiences. Propound a question as to whether a soul personality could evolve itself to any degree of perfection in a single incarnation here on earth. To the general rule, there are notable exceptions, even in the modern days, without resorting to the lives of the old masters, often we contact young men and women whom are early in life, even before 45, show plainly their personalities and reflections of their soul qualities have gone far in the process of evolution. Find them naturally radiant in a brilliant aura of strong personality and magnetism. We find them radiating the aura through the heartbeat of love and tenderness, kindness, and consideration. We find them altruistic and unselfish. We see them becoming more spiritual or divine and more beautiful in soul personality. The character each year and character each year, and know that the last half of their life will be spent joyfully sharing in the glories of nature and the goodness of God. But have you not noticed that in most such cases, the development of the soul attributes made themselves plain early in their life, and that while very young, these persons plainly indicated that the soul personality within them had contacted life and its problems once before and was experienced in the problem? Yes.
Now, I have a question.
Good.
When you made a statement, I can't say it verbatim, but you made a statement about the being soul only having one incarnation, and that was to no avail in the evolution of that soul.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the Jesus' soul must have been incarnated in someone else, or was he conscious of that he was housing the Christ within him from his childhood? And that's the first question. Could you answer that?
Well, do you want a reason or do you want the full answer?
No, I want the full answer that doesn't take long and complexity.
I wonder if you'd like it.
Yeah, I'd like it.
Well, Jesus was already a master,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
and he had just completed a life on another plane, another planet, another plane of consciousness entirely, or another plane of consciousness existed. And during the preparation of those 42 generations, had lived a different type of life among different people, yes.
Okay, was this his first Earth incarnation, or was it several before? When he manifested his
Well, I'd be making a supposition if I answered that, because there is absolutely no record of it. And this is not an unusual thing, because most records are wiped out on the teachers.
Another question related to that is, what do you mean by human?
Well, a human is a being which is occupying a body which has evolved from the lower animal form, and when that vehicle got to the point where it was a perfected vehicle, then God breathed the breath of life into the vehicle, didn't he? And it was emancipated in a soul. It is a vehicle and being which has gone through evolution from the earth plane. This is the human.
Now, the other question
This is man, because the word human derives from the Hindu word hu, meaning tiger. And the L-man is the man who is highly evolved when he came here, and came from, well, some other place anyway. Let's put it that way. And already had his consciousness. Yes.
what is meant by the earth plane?
All that vibrational area all the area encompassed by the vibration in which the power and spirit of the Father generates and crystallizes down to the density of what is called material substance.
The explanation that you gave on human, how does that differ between the explanation of Darwin's theory of evolution?
The difference between the two is that has nothing to do with it. The difference between that and Darwin's theory is that man came from a monkey or some species thereof, and this is not true. This is not the link. The monkey the orangutan, or came from the man and became the degenerating, I guess is the word for it, soul, or one who is imprisoned and staying in this particular life wave until it could emancipate itself. But we do not accept the revivification of the soul through animal bodies as such, but this is the only thing that in rare cases you will find a soul in an animal body. And this is the only thing. It's a very rare case, but it happens. Yeah.
In that case, who became matter, or what became matter?
I don't know the answer. Not without looking for it. In fact, I don't much care. Right at this time. Because it don't make too much difference. We got too many canes going on now. Well, yes. Okay. Will do. Furthermore, we must not fail to examine the testimony as revealed in modern psychology and psychiatry. For years, man has been attempting to study the soul by studying the subnormal or the supernormal traits and habits. As a result of a great field of observation has opened up, and this has provided us with vast storehouse of facts. Foremost among the facts and outstanding amongst the laws and principles we have discovered in this way are these: each great or small experience in life which tests the moral strength, strains, and the voluntary limitations and convictions of man, or it calls forth the substantial power and reasoning of the inner man, has left each individual stronger in that essence or quality which we call soul, and the gradual development of the power and natural tendencies of this soul essence and reasoning leaves man or woman more highly evolved spiritually and mentally, and in those cases and in those qualities which makes for greater advancement in all world affairs. This then would tend to prove that the purpose of the soul's experience within the earthly body of man is the development within the man as an immaterial body or entity which profits by each lesson learned and unconsciously influences man in his thinking and doing, so that he cooperates with nature's constructive forces unconsciously. It is in this way that we find the key to those processes and conditions which manifest outwardly in what is called culture and refinement. It is in this that we must seek for an explanation of why and how pardon me, certain traits and instinctive tendencies and preferences grow and become dominating ideas and inhibiting powers in man's thinking and doing. Thus we need only the evidence of the psychological research to find proof that the soul's attributes within man slowly evolve, and that this evolution manifests itself not in the spiritual sphere to which the soul belongs, but rightly here on earth plane, while the soul is within the body. And that man's consciousness and unconsciousness add advancement and evolution is a natural result. Objectively, of the subjective development of these attributes of the soul, here we find a very important principle and a very definite answer to the question of what purpose the soul's experience in the body is serving, and whether that purpose relates to the earthly experience of man or some future indefinite existence on the spiritual plane. Does that answer your question? Well, it should. Oh, well, you get it later then. In the first place, we must define the soul as distinguished from the body and the mortal man as absolutely divine. Now, that does not mean that the physical body is depraved or of no consequence. For after all, the laws which made the physical body manifest, which gave its existence, were divinely perceived and are the result of a divine function. Man, however, can degrade the body, he can affect its status, he can contribute to its being diseased, injured, undeveloped. This he cannot do to the soul. Almost all religions and philosophies which hold to the recognition of the soul consider it the truly divine essence within man's nature, that is, as absolutely distinguished in every way from his material nature. Consequently, if the soul is divine, our next question must be, are there degrees or gradations of its divinity and perfection? In other words, can there be some souls which are partly divine, half divine, or a third divine? This is logic. That's what the question's based on. That would seem absurd because we recognize divinity as the only standard of perfection by which all other things are measured. Certainly, if that which is divine is not completely perfect, then all else is lost therefore. If our souls are divine, they are perfect and complete in every sense. Thus, regardless of the heritage of an individual, of his birth, where he resides, or even his tendencies or conduct, his soul at least is perfect and divine. Certainly, if that is true, we cannot evolve it. We cannot add to that which is already perfect. Further, if the soul is of the essence of God, would it not seem strange that there would be given to man the power to perfect something that God is of himself? If mankind can develop and add to the godly, then he is greater than God. And the opposite is also true. If the soul is of God, then certainly man cannot degrade it. Does it lie within the province of man's besmirch besmirk the soul, to drag the divinity down into the mire, to stain it and shred it. If that would be so, then man is God and God is not. So this reasoning consequently must lead us to the conclusion that it is not man's soul which evolves, but rather something else. Now we have said about this, the divine spark exists equally in every man, not as a separate segment, but rather as a continuous flow from its source through which all mankind alike and the self. Yet we find mankind reacting differently. We find those who are really spiritual beings and those whom are striving to be, and those who have failed, absolutely failed, to recognize the divine essence within themselves. What causes this? Is this because man has been granted will, the ability to permit himself to heed and recognize the dictates of the soul, or to deny them and degrade himself objectively and physically? Let us imagine, if we will, a number of large electric lights, each giving off a beautiful pure white, scintillating brilliance. This whiteness and purity of the light represents the perfection and divinity of the soul. Let us therefore imagine that there is placed before each one of these white lights, which are all directly connected and in turn connected with the divine source which gives them their illumination, a plain glass, some pane of glass, being a little larger and some a little smaller. We find as we look at these panes of glass in front of the electric light that some are radiant or murky light because they are unclean. They seem to be smeared or covered with paint or mud. Some are giving off a yellow light, some a greenish light, and some a scarlet light. And some are so clear, so free of any embellishments, that the white brilliant light passes through them without any interruption, and is just as though they were looking at a light bulb themselves. Let us liken the panes of glass which are in front of every light bulb a physical body, and let us liken the peculiar light which each gives off to the personality. We see therefore that each has behind it the same pure white light, but some of the panes of glass have become soiled, and a very small portion of the light is able to pass through, and it is colored and distorted. Yet if we take a damp cloth or some paint remover and start to clean the outer surface of the glass, we find that a beam of light, white light, pierces through. Gee, I wonder if paint remover would do it. Which is dazzling in its brilliance. And as we enlarge the area, as we clean the glass, more and more light passes through until finally nothing obscures the brilliance, and the body of the glass no longer becomes an obstacle to the white light. The personality evolved. But do we involve the soul, personality, until it is in attunement with the soul? And then, as with the clear glass before the brilliant electric bulb, there is no further concealment or distortion. Questions? Yes, my time for putting her up. We're going to go over this again because we're going to get this idea through our heads, no matter how many lessons it takes, because this is important. Yes, fire away.
Did you say that the soul has any further function on the cosmic plane once you leave the Earth?
What is that?
Did you say that the soul has further function on the, or not, on the cosmic plane after you leave the dense world? Or is it only functioning, evolving on the
I think our word evolving has us sort of at a disadvantage. And I mean by that we no longer have a physical body then. But you must remember that the record of those lifetimes are there. You must remember that you're not going to do away with the scratches and the marks on the soul encasement, or the soul, which is the case of the self. And that's there. And when you go into the other plane, you will go where you have the ability to function, and no other place. This is why we say that if you are a good Methodist, remember the good Methodist heaven, and then you'll have a place to go to work it out, so that you can get there and be there a while anyway, before you find out that it really doesn't exist after all. Now, you will function as you have the ability to function. This is why in the process of evolution, or in the process of spiritual evolution, I should say, that man learns to control his vehicle. This is why you have your old teacher always yelling, "Can you control your mind? Can you control your thought? Can you control your mind?" And you think it sounds like a broken record. But if I kept you at it for a whole year, I wouldn't be doing it too long. Because your thoughts and the control of that mind is the only thing in the world that's going to do you any good when you get out of this body. You have no other control. You just let one thought slip and boom, you've had it. I mean, you things act just like that. You're there, period. I'm not going to tell you the rest of that story, because if I did, your hair would raise right up straight.
Excuse me, Father. Let's say someone, when Jesus came down, he was involved in the master. When he went back up to the other plane, he went to where he came from, that level where he came from.
He had gone into the realm of lordship. He became one of the hierarchy of heaven, which is putting it in terminology. Yes.
If the soul is the memory and the personality of the self, both the soul and the self come together in each one.
The soul is the shell of the self. You'll see that without, you won't have to have anybody tell you that. What you say. Yes.
Yes, Father, would you scientifically explain formation?
Doesn't want much, does it? All right, I'll give it to you on Tuesdays or on Thursday's lesson. Because I don't dare start that now, because you'd be involved in this twiddle if I was hit without following it through. Yes.
Well, when the soul and when the self, when you leave the physical form and you work out on the other plane, doesn't the soul become the shall we say, manifested body of the self then? Because it's still manifest, whether it's in one plane of vibration or in another.
You mean that, does the self go with me?
No, when you leave the physical form,
Yeah. Yeah.
does the soul then become the manifestation in which you travel in?
Sometimes.
The vehicle when you travel.
Sometimes. Sometimes I take a body along with me too.
Well, yeah, this is what I was trying to do. In other
Sometimes
words,
I have to take a body that I manufacture along with me. I'm telling you the truth.
I know it.
Well, I can't answer you any other way. Really, Rick.
Yeah,
It's the truth. Yeah.
The various souls, or are there various souls on this all that say do
I'll give you a physical manifestation rather than try to go into the ramifications of this, because this would be quite a subject. A person who has had experience or training someplace else, and who has evolved to the extent of see how do I word this now to get you guys off on the wrong track. That's a dirty one. To the extent of going from here to there without worrying about heaven or hell, has developed a state of consciousness and vibration within their being that is not entirely compatible with that of the human. And I have had about 40, I think it's 58, the last count. Yeah, somewhere around there, roughly plus or minus, because I stopped counting. Individuals who came to me from different parts of the country, and we're trying to find out the reason why they were such strange individuals. But you got to do your missionary work. And this is the reason that we have a great many people whom are perfectly all right. There's nothing, they're not bad people or anything of that nature, but people who just can't live with somebody else, and usually it's because they are evolved beings which have reached a level that is not compatible with the others. And it is a distinct frequency and nature that they must marry their own kind, let's put it that way. And I'm speaking of the basis of marriage because it's the easiest way of expressing. This is a state of vibration and an emanation which the earthman senses but doesn't know anything about why. He's just danged uncomfortable with it if he's around it too long. A little dose of it is good for him, but too much of it is just too much. Yes?
And what part does the planetary aspects in your astrological sign of birth and natal chart play upon your soul? Is it the attributes you see? What do they do? Is that a incarnation, or is it just at that given moment?
Let me get that question straight, because I could go way afield on this. You say, what influence does the planets have upon the soul life? Well, after you've lived on all of them, you then become a real universal being. And you get along with most anywhere. And otherwise you will take on the various lives, you will take on the aspects and the attributes of these planets, and as you go along the road of the eternal way, and then you get to a place where you become nothing, and so all of them are all right, and you use them when you need to. Any more questions? That's enough to fill several volumes. It's 5 minutes after 8. Goodbye.